Well, welcome to Christian Answers. This is Pastor Jeff Short, your Bible teacher and cultural analyst. And today we're going to be reviewing the movie release recently, Wicked. It has been playing at theaters for about a month or so, about a month. And I'm going to go through this and review this movie. I first became aware of this the drama, about maybe, was it 10 years ago? I think it began to appear on billboards around Cleveland area. As I was driving through Cleveland, I would see this drama play being advertised by a local community college. And it struck me how odd the advertisement was. It showed a witch, a green witch, with the title Wicked. And I thought, well, that's a strange title. First of all, wicked is a negative word. It's a negative connotations, especially in the Judeo-Christian West. We associate wicked with evil. You know, the Bible talks about Sodom and Gomorrah was a wicked place and why it was destroyed by God for its evil and sinful, sexually immoral, moral activity. And so the Bible always refers to wicked as an evil thing. So why would you want to name your drama Wicked and think that would attract people on a billboard? Also, there was the witch connotation. And again, that's a wicked, it's a evil and sinful connotation because that's a negative thing. The Bible warns us against occultism. It warns us against trying to contact the dead. It warns us against this kind of occultic sorcery, witchcraft. It actually describes in the Old Testament witchcraft. And there is a long Christian understanding that witches, real people, women who are dedicated to evil, and real people who are dedicated to talking to the dead and occult activity is forbidden by God. So again, why would you have a witch and the word wicked on an advertisement if you wanted to attract people? These are themes that would not attract people. These would repel people. Unless you're really perverted and twisted and you're drawn to wicked and witches and evil things, this would not be something you would think would work well in marketing. And I thought, that's a strange advertisement. That's a strange play. I don't think I would ever want to go to that play because it doesn't seem like it has anything of any interest. In fact, I might even take note to stay away from it because I normally don't run to or go to things that are outright evil. Why would I do that? I'm following God. I'm following the will of God. I'm trying to order my life according to the will of God as found in the Bible. Why would I go? It's just like I wouldn't want to go to a church of Satan, or I wouldn't want to go to some satanic ritual because it would be ugly, blasphemous, and it would go counter to all my values. So I was turned off immediately. This was 10, 15 years ago when I began to see the play, the drama, Wicked, out in colleges. And now it's a very big Broadway, New York musical, and it's very popular on campuses all over the country, and local community play houses show this also. So it's a very popular kind of play. Unfortunately, even in high schools, it's become popular, alarmingly so, because it bills itself, this later theatrical release bills itself as a child or children-friendly kind of a thing. If you go into Target, you'll see all kinds of Wicked, the movie, merchandise for children, the kind of merchandise that children would wear or collect, or action figures or lunch boxes, and all the kind of merchandising they do for movies for children, like Disney would do for children. They're doing it for this Wicked, and it's not. I don't believe, after seeing the movie, I don't believe it's age appropriate for children. I think it would be a bad idea to take a child to see this movie, and I'll explain that later. But the movie itself and the play based on the movie based on the play, the book, and it's based on a book that was written in the 1990s by a novelist named McGuire, who is also a homosexual gay man who is so-called married to his male lover in Massachusetts. He was one of the first to be married under the Massachusetts law. I think it was in 2005 or so. And he wrote this adaptation of the original Wizard of Oz. Now, the original Wizard of Oz is a classic work. There's no question about it. I remember growing up and watching the movie on TV. I think it shows up every year. It had showed up every year by one of the major networks. They would play that every year. And I think I've seen it many different times. I can't even remember how many times I've seen it. And as a kid, I liked it. I mean, I thought it had adventure. It was scary. It had really good music to accommodate the story. It had good actors. Judy Garland was a young woman in her prime, acting, singing, and some of the others were very good also who starred in the movie. The special effects were great. This was done in the 1930s, if you can imagine that. Yet it was still in color. That was a new thing coming into movies, colorizing movies. Really good color, really good theatrical sets, special effects, fire, sound. It just was really well done, and one of the greatest, I would say, movies of all time that has come out. And especially something important is that it was done so early in the 20th century that a lot of the computer-aided designs and a lot of special effects now that we take for granted, those were not even available. The computers hadn't come along, and a lot of these programs hadn't been written so that you can produce with the green screen technology and video and everything, editing. That was all not available in the 30s, so they had to do everything manually. And so this was quite an accomplishment, and it has stood the test of time. The novel itself and the movie in the 1930s have always been popular. It's still popular today. It's still relevant. It feels like it was just made in modern times. It's aged well. In other words, it's a classic. It's timeless, and I enjoyed it as a child. And it taught basic categories of right and wrong. It showed courage, and it showed perseverance, and it showed kindness, and it showed the difference between right and wrong, and evil and righteous. And it was just a good movie, and it could be watched by children. It could be watched by young adults, by older people. It was really popular across all age spectrums. Now, the adaptation of The Wizard of Oz, written in the 90s by this author, McGuire, is totally different. It seeks to take and make the Wicked Witch of the West into a hero, and to really look at the establishment of Oz and the Emerald City, and even the Good Witch, though almost like a fairy godmother, make them to be bad, and that this courageous Wicked Witch of the West was fighting against the evil Oz and the evil establishment of the Emerald City. It just tried to take everything in the movie that was good and try to turn it on its head and subvert all of it. So as you're scratching your head, well, wait a minute. Now, how would this be good for kids? to uh, you have this classic story of the Wizard of Oz, beloved by everyone, and then you have an author who says, "I'm going to subvert the whole plot narrative, and I'm going to now make the enemy and the evil witch, she's going to be the hero." Now, anyone familiar with these Luciferian societies, if you've ever looked into like the Rosicrucians, Madame Blavatsky, who founded that organization, or if you've ever heard of a character of the early 20th century called Aleister Crowley and his Thelema Society and his religion he tried to start, you're going to realize that this is their agenda. They don't like the Western moral Christian influence, so they want to subvert the Christian Western establishment and try to turn it up on its end. Aleister Crowley was a specific leader in this, but the latest permutation of that is the Church of Satan with Anton LaVey out in San Francisco, California. I think that was popular for a number of decades. And he did the same thing. He tried to invert the moral structure of society. He tried to teach that Lucifer was really the good guy in the biblical narrative. And we don't have the whole picture, and God was trying to impose his will on everyone and force everyone to conform to his will. And Lucifer was the lone figure that stood up and rebelled against God and his kingdom establishment. And he was able to lead a third of the angels in rebelling against God, because all they wanted to do is just live their own lives, live their own truths, and be true to themselves. And God wanted to impose his will upon the angels' order, and wanted to impose his will upon men and women. And so Lucifer is he's a rebel. He's trying to rebel against the oppression of God. And that's the narrative that Aleister Crowley and these Luciferian societies have historically taken. They want to subvert the Christian influence and replace it with a "do what thou will." That was the mantra of Aleister Crowley, "do what thou will." And it's talking to people, do what you want to do. And we see this in the 60s, do your own thing, do what you feel. Again, Crowley was a very popular influencer of the 60s rock scene. If you look at some of the records of the Beatles, for example, they have a picture of Aleister Crowley. I think it was on the Abbey Road album, or was it the Sgt. Pepper's? Yeah, Sgt. Pepper's album. And then you also see Led Zeppelin was highly influenced by Aleister Crowley. That same attitude was, let's subvert the Christian Western influence and produce something else. Well, you get that same attitude by Maguire, the author of Wicked in the 90s. You get that same attitude through the play, and you get that same attitude through this movie adaptation of The Wizard of Oz. It's like, let's invert and subvert and upend Western Christian morality and values. And this is what the movie attempts to do. Now, the movie itself is, again, like I said, it's billed for kids. It's marketed to kids. It's supposed to be a kids' movie. And it's supposed to appeal to their interests. But it's really not a kids' movie. And I would recommend not taking small children, especially, to see this movie, because it's actually a bad influence. But the quality of the plot, the narrative, is, I would think, very poor. If you compare this to the original Wizard of Oz, there's no comparison. The original Wizard of Oz had good acting, a good storyline, narrative, and plot, good theatrical design, and it had really good music, catchy songs that you can remember years and years later, I remember I have two or three of the Wizard of Oz songs in my head right now that I can hum. They're catchy, they are memorable. But this new adaptation, I can't even remember one of the songs that was played. They're so blasé. They don't meet the quality of the original. I think there's one song that talks about eternity. That's the only thing I can remember about the whole music. There was a theme about eternity, and but it's not that memorable and it's not that catchy. Uh, the special effects are great. I'll give it that. Definitely special effects have come a long way in the last 100 years. The original Wizard of Oz movie is almost now 100 years old. That's incredible. And it still holds up great. This movie, I don't think, is going to be a classic, and it's not going to hold up great because, first of all, the storyline, the plot is weak. And unfortunately, there are people that are going to think this is great. But if you actually look at some of the themes, if you're a Christian and you have Judeo-Christian values and you follow God's will to the best of your ability, you're not going to like this movie. Why? Well, first of all, not only is the author of the original Wicked book of the 90s, McGuire, a homosexual and married to a gay lover, so-called married. The lead actress who plays the Wicked Witch of the West, the Green Witch, she is a lesbian. And she goes around and being interviewed for this movie, and she has shaved her head. So she's a nonconformist rebel, embracing her unique style. And you can tell that she will do anything to defy the conventions of society. So she's going around giving interviews with the totally shaven head of a woman, which is normally a sign of disgrace. They use that World War II to mark out women who have committed adultery or were collaborators, and they would shame the women by shaving their head. And so she's a lesbian, open lesbian. And then they have scenes in the movie that show a transgender in the lineup. And then they have one of the co-stars of the movie is a gay man. And it shows other gay men fawning over him. And it's just full of subversive plots and scenes and depictions in this. So it's not a good influence on kids. It's not a good moral movie. It doesn't teach timeless truths. It's actually just sowing the seeds of, I would say, rebellion and revolution, which is exactly what we see the radical left today and those who are opposed to Christianity trying to do. The whole LGBTQ movement. This movie will be a favorite of the LGBTQ activists because it does so much of what they're trying to accomplish. They're trying to undermine Western Christian values. They're trying to disrupt Western establishment based on Judeo-Christian values. They're trying to revolt against the Christian value system and subvert Christianity as much as they can, so as to replace the Christian foundation as far as with family and marriage and gender roles and so on. They want to replace it with do what you feel, do whatever you want. And this movie is actually a tool that will be used by the LGBTQ movement, the radical left, and people who want to destroy our culture, whatever good is left in it, and replace it with something else. And they want to rewrite the script, too. They want to say that, well, you really think that Christianity and the Bible, that's the good, and we need to aspire to reach that ideal. But when in reality, the Bible and Christianity and God of the Bible, they're all oppressive forces. And so we need to subvert it and destroy that so that we can live the way we want to live our own truths. You've heard that a lot. So this movie is not a good influence on children, and it's not a good cultural message that we need to hear at this moment in our cultural history. Now, I think of Isaiah 5:20 in the Bible, where Isaiah warns that these wicked, evil, satanic forces will try to turn the good into bad, and they'll try to turn bad into good. And they'll confuse the categories of moral reality and try to get people to question what is really good and what is bad, and what is bad is really good. And that's what the writer did in the Wicked novel, and what the film is, the adaptation of The Wizard of Oz, is trying to do in the film today. The Wicked, the plot, the narrative is trying to subvert, trying to undermine, trying to upend and upset all of the truth and good that you thought you knew, and trying to get you to question the authority of what is good and bad. The beginning of the movie starts out saying where the Wizard of Oz ended. The Wicked Witch of the West is dead. Yay, ding dong, the witch is dead. A very catchy, memorable little ditty. And so everyone in the original Oz movie was celebrating. They did it in Emerald City, and all the Wizard of Oz characters, yay, the Wicked Witch is dead. And now we don't have that evil person trying to destroy all the good in society. And this movie continues that, but then it undermines it by trying to explain, well, you don't understand the Wicked Witch of the West. She's really a good person, and she's trying to live out her truths in the face of oppression. And the bad guys are really the people you think are the good guys. You think the good witch, who is nice and kind and loving and concerned, you think she's a good guy, but she's really the bad guy because she's sold out. She's selling out to the establishment, and she's subverting her own values to that of the Emerald City establishment, and she is just really going along to get along. So she's just playing her part. But the Wicked Witch of the West now, she's really good because she's standing up against that mean old Wizard of Oz and the corrupt Emerald City establishment. And so she's really the hero. But you've always thought that the Wicked Witch of the West was the bad guy, but she's really the good guy. And you got to understand her story. And once you understand the backstory, you will see that everything you thought about the Wizard of Oz was all wrong. And what that is doing, I think, and it's also making social commentary, because you've had the radical left for the last few decades really trying to convince the citizens of the United States that, the traditional Christian Western value system, which we think is really the thing that has made us great in the West and has made it a blessing for citizens to live in the West. You think that that's the reason because of the Judeo-Christian values? Well, that's really the thing that has hurt us, and that's the bad thing, and we need to overthrow that, and we need to allow for people to do their own thing and live their own truths and be who they want to be. Just like that Aleister Crowley mantra, do what thy will, which means do what you want to do and not let God's will be done. It's let thy will be done. And so it's a radical turning to the self and living the way you want to live, and living selfishly to your own heart and follow your heart kind of a thing. You hear that all over the Hollywood these days, is follow your heart. You've got to follow your heart. Follow your instincts, follow your gut, go with your authority rather than an external authority of God. And so they want to try to tear down that external authority. And so the Wicked Witch of the West was actually a hero, according to Wicked, the movie. And so we should look up to her as a role model almost. And so that's why I do not recommend this movie to a family. It's not really a family friendly movie. It's not really a place where children, especially small children, should get excited. We shouldn't buy their merchandise, the Wicked merchandise franchise items, and give them as gifts, or let children get too excited about this, because it's not really a good and healthy, wholesome movie like the original Wizard of Oz was. So I would encourage the original Wizard of Oz movie. Yeah, if that's in the theaters, or if that's on DVD, or if that's on TV, yeah, sit down with a family and watch that. But this Wicked movie, it's supposed to be the backstory of the Wicked Witch of the West. It takes the Wizard of Oz, the original movie, and turns it on its head, and it's not in a good way. And the quality of acting is not so good. The singing, the songs, they're not memorable. The narrative plot is not strong. And I don't think it's going to be anything more than just something like, I think about 20, 30 years ago, there was an adaptation of The Wizard of Oz called The Wiz with Michael Jackson, Diana Ross, and that bombed. And the reason is that, again, if you're trying to improve a classic, it's very difficult, because you're probably not going to do something better than the classic is, because it's a classic, okay? So it's almost doomed to fail at the beginning. But this movie is not just a failure to succeed at producing something on the level of the classic. It is positively a bad movie, I think, and it's for what it's trying to do subtly, the social commentary it's trying to make, and the message it's trying to promote, I think is bad. So I would highly recommend families to skip this movie. There are better movies out there. I would not recommend spending money supporting this movie, because I don't think it's worth the admission price, and I don't think the message that it gives is very good. So I actually oppose the subversion that it tries to do of Christian Western civilization. I hope that's been a helpful little bit of a movie review, and we'll see you back next week on the program. God bless.